What if your four-legged best friend, that loyal companion who has passed from this life, never truly left? What if the love they felt for you was so immensely strong, so overwhelming, that it could somehow, inexplicably, still echo around you, like a silent song or an invisible embrace? So many people around the world share experiences that utterly defy our most basic understanding of reality, a ghostly touch in the deep stillness of the night, when all is silent and the house sleeps. The familiar comforting sound of paws pattering down the hall, a sound that was once the soundtrack of your life, or even that vivid, almost palpable sense of their dear presence right there beside you. Are these events mere tricks of a mind still grieving, clinging to precious memories in an attempt to fill an immense void? Or is there perhaps something deeper, more mysterious and transcendental behind these experiences that are so common, yet so extraordinary? Could the veil between worlds be so thin when it comes to a love so pure? Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to our channel. Today, we're preparing to dive headfirst into a topic that invariably touches the most sensitive heartstrings of countless people. The intriguing and moving possibility that our beloved dogs might return in some ethereal or sensory way even after they've crossed the Rainbow Bridge. Together, we'll explore absolutely incredible testimonies, emotional accounts of inexplicable moments that make us profoundly question whether some dogs, those who left an indelible mark on our souls, ever truly leave us completely. Could they come back to offer us comfort in our loneliest moments, to protect us from dangers we don't even perceive, or simply to let us know, in a subtle and reassuring way, that they're still nearby, watching over us? In this video, we'll share these poignant narratives and, crucially, we'll also analyze what science, with its methodological rigor, and skeptics, with their pertinent questions, have to say about this much-debated phenomenon. Get ready, because you might just have to rethink everything you believed about life after death for our loyal and irreplaceable canine companions. The journey we're taking today promises to be, at the very least, revealing and deeply touching. Loyalty beyond life, the case of Bronco and other graveside vigils. One of the most touching and universally recognized signs of this possible connection that extends beyond life is, undoubtedly, the behavior of dogs who faithfully visit the graves of their deceased owners. Here in Brazil, one of the most emblematic cases, which moved the entire country, is that of Bronco, a little dog from Santa Clara do Sul in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. After his owner, Ademar Seidel, passed away in 2020, Bronco began a daily routine of visiting his beloved owner's grave. Even as years passed, the small dog was frequently seen sitting in front of Ademar's photograph in a clear and poignant display of longing and loyalty that seemed to defy death itself. This unwavering devotion moved the local community so much that they decided to erect a statue in his honor, immortalizing his example of faithfulness. Ademar's daughter, in an interview, expressed the depth of this bond, stating, "The feeling that the little dog Bronco had for my father was very real. It's something that captures attention and moves us." This public recognition underscores the intensity of a bond that transcends the simple relationship between human and animal. Stories like Bronco's, though they seem like something out of a movie, aren't as rare as one might think. We have the world-famous case of Capitan in Argentina, who for many years kept vigil at the grave of his owner, Miguel Guzman, even though he had never been taken to the cemetery by the family before. His persistence in finding and remaining at his human companion's final resting place is a mystery that captivates and intrigues. Or let's recall the legendary Hachiko in Japan, whose unwavering loyalty in waiting for his owner at the train station for nearly a decade after his death became a global and timeless symbol of canine fidelity. These dogs, with their incredible and moving persistence in their solitary vigils, seem to truly embody an emotional bond so powerful that not even the insurmountable barrier of death can break it. They transform cemeteries, places of sadness and farewell, into sanctuaries of eternal love. But what truly drives this extraordinary and moving behavior? Many owners, friends, family members, and mere observers interpret these visits as irrefutable proof that the dog still feels the owner's presence at the site, or that, in some mysterious way, the spirit of the deceased owner can still draw the dog to them. It is undoubtedly a deeply comforting thought, isn't it? The idea that love, in its purest and most selfless form, can truly transcend physical and temporal barriers, keeping the flame of connection alive. Of course, in a more in-depth and objective analysis, we also need to consider other possibilities, other explanations that don't involve the supernatural. Animal behavior experts, ethologists, suggest that this profound loyalty, while absolutely extraordinary and worthy of admiration, can be explained by other factors. Dogs are by nature creatures of well-established habits and routines. Visiting the cemetery may have simply become a new routine in the animal's life, perhaps because it began frequenting the place with other grieving family members, or because it associated that specific space with the last, strong, and memorable presence of its beloved human. The loyalty and deep bonding capacity of dogs are undeniable and scientifically proven characteristics, and these vigil behaviors could be an extreme manifestation of that devotion, intensified by the pain of loss and the inevitable changes in home dynamics. This doesn't necessarily point to supernatural contact, but it still stands as a monumental testament to the deep emotional bond and impressive emotional memory of these incredible animals. To date, science, with its rigorous methods of observation and experimentation, has no conclusive proof that dogs can perceive ghosts or interact with spirits in the way we humans sometimes imagine or wish. Their behavior, however moving and seemingly inexplicable to our eyes, is generally analyzed through the lens of ethology, the scientific study of animal behavior, which seeks explanations grounded in natural instincts, learned behaviors throughout life, and the complex social bonds they establish with other beings. Whispers from beyond, sounds, touches, and fleeting appearances. Beyond visits to physical locations laden with meaning, like cemeteries or favorite spots, many grieving owners report direct and deeply personal sensory experiences they firmly believe originate from their deceased dogs. These are stories shared in whispers, sometimes with a fear of ridicule, but always with a palpable conviction. Hearing that familiar scratch at the door, which once signaled a request to go out or come in. The unmistakable jingle of a collar, even when it's stored away in a drawer. Or even the characteristic sound of paws walking through the house, echoing in empty hallways long after the pet has passed. One person, in an online pet forum, for example, emotionally shared that for several consecutive nights after losing her small dog, she and her family clearly heard his typical snoring coming from where he used to sleep. For her, this experience was profoundly comforting. She felt it was as if he wanted to come back to make sure we were okay, a final proof of care and love. Other equally moving accounts tell of tactile sensations, touches that seem to come from nowhere, feeling the familiar weight of the dog jumping onto the bed during the night, a movement that so often woke them with a smile, a wet nose gently touching a hand seeking affection, as happened so many times, or the comforting warmth of their body nearby during the night, a presence that banished any feeling of loneliness. In rarer cases, but no less impactful for those who experience them, some people claim to have briefly seen their dog's form, a fleeting shadow in the corner of their eye, disappearing as soon as they try to focus on it, or a somewhat transparent ethereal apparition that vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a mixture of astonishment, longing, and solace. Recently, a study led by Jen Golbeck, a professor at the University of Maryland, sought to categorize and better understand these types of post-mortem experiences with pets. Analyzing hundreds of detailed accounts from owners of deceased dogs, the researcher found that the most common experiences were indeed auditory. Hearing the dog, in about 37% of reported cases, manifesting as phantom barks, the sound of a collar moving, or the characteristic click of nails on the floor. Many of these physical or sensory interactions, interestingly, occurred at night, with some owners reporting the distinct sensation of feeling the dog in bed beside them, as if nothing had changed. From a scientific and psychological perspective, these experiences are often interpreted as complex manifestations of the grieving process. Losing a pet can be, for many people, an experience as painful and overwhelming as losing a human family member, and the grieving process can indeed trigger various unusual sensory phenomena. Hypnagogic hallucinations, occurring while falling asleep, or hypnopompic hallucinations, occurring upon waking, are relatively common and can include perceiving sounds, touches, or even fleeting visions. Auditory or visual pareidolia, that fascinating tendency of our brain to find familiar and significant patterns in random and undefined stimuli, can also lead us to interpret common household sounds or passing shadows as our departed pet. The brain, in its incessant attempt to process the immense loss and fill the void left behind, can, in a way, recreate familiar and comforting sensations. The immense desire to have one's companion back, the longing that tightens the chest, can, without our conscious awareness, lead to these vivid sensations. As Worden, 2013, an expert in grief studies, points out, feeling a presence and even experiencing hallucinations are normal and expected reactions during intense grieving. This does not, in any way, diminish the profound meaning or importance of the experience for those who live it. On the contrary, it only demonstrates how incredibly strong and significant the bond that united them to their animal was. For many, these visits bring indescribable comfort, a feeling of not being forgotten, and the reassuring conviction that the love that existed still endures, somehow, somewhere. Visual and auditory proof. What do images and recordings say? These days, with the proliferation of home security cameras and the ubiquity of smartphones capable of capturing video and audio at any moment, it's not at all uncommon for alleged proof of supposed canine paranormal activity to surface online in video or audio format. A video that went viral some time ago showed an Australian resident's dog, named Ryder, apparently playing alone in the yard until a whitish dog-like shape appeared and seemed to interact with him. The owner vehemently insisted that no other animal was present at the location at that moment, fueling speculation about the nature of the apparition. In another widely publicized case, a couple in England believed they had filmed the ghost of their dog Muttley in their kitchen 2 months after his passing. The somewhat shaky, low-light footage showed a translucent figure moving briefly. A paranormal investigator even analyzed the images and claimed, to the astonishment of many and skepticism of others, that they seemed legitimate. These recordings, once shared online, almost invariably trigger an avalanche of heated debates and divergent opinions. For some, they are undeniable proof of life after death for animals, a comforting glimpse of the other side. For others, they are easily explainable phenomena, the result of misinterpretations or technological artifacts. And it's precisely at this point that scientifically trained skeptics tend to be more vocal and present counter-arguments. Photographs and videos of ghosts, whether human or animal, are notoriously difficult to validate conclusively and objectively. Visual anomalies in images can be caused by a myriad of factors. Unexpected light reflections, dust particles, or small insects passing very close to the camera lens, creating the famous orb effect, camera malfunctions or technical limitations, or even the aforementioned pareidolia, where our brain, eager to find patterns, sees familiar shapes, like that of a dog, in blurs, shadows, or undefined objects. Similarly, audio recordings supposedly capturing barks, whimpers, or other characteristic sounds of a deceased dog, a phenomenon sometimes referred to as electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP in an animal context, are also highly questionable from a scientific standpoint. Existing background noise, electronic interference from other devices, or simply the misinterpretation of perfectly normal ambient sounds can be, and often are, the real explanation behind these auditory signals. Scientific validation for this type of proof is, for all practical purposes, non-existent. Science, by definition, relies on evidence that can be replicated under controlled conditions and tested by multiple independent researchers, something that these spontaneous, subjective, and often unique events, by their very intrinsic nature, do not offer. It's worth remembering and emphasizing that the mere fact that we cannot immediately find an obvious scientific explanation for a strange photograph or video does not automatically mean it's a supernatural phenomenon. Often, if we investigate thoroughly, with more careful technical analysis of the images or recordings, or with a better understanding of the environment where they were captured, very simple and mundane explanations emerge. The burden of proof, in the scientific method, always rests with those making the extraordinary claim. And to date, no proof of a ghost dog's existence has withstood rigorous and impartial scientific scrutiny. Still, it's crucial to recognize that for someone going through the painful grieving process who encounters an inexplicable image or sound that intensely reminds them of their beloved pet, the interpretation can be deeply personal and bring enormous comfort and relief, regardless of what skeptics or science might say. The emotional experience in these cases often overrides rational analysis. Protection and interaction from beyond. Spiritual guardians? Some accounts go considerably beyond a simple sense of presence or an inexplicable sound, suggesting that departed dogs can somehow return to actively protect their owners or interact in more direct and perceptible ways with the world of the living. There are stories, shared with deep conviction, of people who felt they were warned of imminent danger, a near-miss car accident, a sudden health problem detected just in time thanks to a strange impulse, and who attributed that warning to a protective intervention from their deceased dog. Others tell of objects moving inexplicably around the house, in a way reminiscent of the dog's typical antics, or of other household pets reacting to an invisible presence, staring intently at an empty spot, growling at nothing, or even playfully engaging with someone who isn't physically there. A person might, for example, recount how they were about to trip over something in the dark, feeling at the last moment a subtle nudge or a sensation of being held back, interpreting this event as protection from their deceased dog, who in life was always very vigilant and attentive to their steps. Or perhaps the new puppy in the house suddenly starts barking and wagging its tail at an empty corner of the room, a behavior the owner immediately associates with the presence of the older dog who passed, as if they were communicating or playing. These situations, though difficult to prove objectively, carry immense emotional weight for those who experience them. These experiences are, by nature, highly subjective and deeply laden with emotional and personal meaning. Believing that a beloved dog continues to watch over us, protecting us even after death, can bring enormous comfort and security, especially in moments of vulnerability or sadness. Spiritualism and various popular beliefs around the world support these interpretations, suggesting that animal spirits, much like human spirits, can remain close to their loved ones or return in times of need, especially if a particularly strong and deep bond of love existed. Some spiritualist schools of thought even believe in intuitive communication with animals, both living and departed, where messages, feelings, and intentions can be exchanged on a non-physical plane. However, traditional science, with its empirical and materialistic approach, does not recognize that dogs, or any other animals, can interact with the physical world or their former owners as spirits after death. Alternative explanations for these events, from a scientific viewpoint, might include mere coincidences, personal interpretation of random events heavily influenced by longing and the desire for connection, or the behavior of other animals reacting to stimuli that we humans, with our more limited senses, cannot perceive. For example, a dog might react to very high-frequency sounds, inaudible to us, or to subtle odors that completely escape our sense of smell. and this reaction could be mistakenly interpreted as an interaction with an invisible or spiritual presence. The desire for protection and the pressing need to feel that the emotional bond has not been entirely broken by death are very powerful psychological forces. In moments of vulnerability, fear, or when sensing danger, the human mind may seek solace and security in explanations that reinforce the continuation of that protective bond that existed with the pet. It is, in a way, a means of keeping alive the memory, role, and importance the animal played in its owner's life, transforming the pain of loss into a sense of continuity and spiritual support. Analysis, discussion. The power of the bond and the lens of belief. Reports of ghost dogs, whether they involve poignant graveside vigils, fleeting ethereal apparitions, inexplicable sounds echoing through the house, or sensations of protection from an unseen plane, all touch upon a fundamental and universally recognized point: the extraordinary and profound bond that unites humans and dogs. This special connection, forged over thousands of years of coexistence, sharing, and mutual dependence, is incredibly rich in unconditional loyalty, pure and selfless love, and a form of communication that often transcends words, manifesting in gazes, gestures, and mutual intuitive understanding. This bond is so strong that for many, the idea of it simply extinguishing with physical death is almost unbearable. When a canine companion departs, the ensuing grief can be absolutely devastating, comparable in intensity and pain to the loss of a human family member. It is precisely during this period of intense sorrow, overwhelming longing, and profound emotional vulnerability that many of these experiences deemed supernatural tend to occur. Psychology, as we've explored, offers various explanations for many of these phenomena. They can be natural manifestations of the grieving process, like auditory or visual hallucinations. It could be pareidolia playing tricks on us, making us see or hear what we so desperately wish for. They could be sensory hallucinations triggered by extreme emotional stress. Or it might simply be the profound and understandable desire to reunite with a cherished friend. These scientific explanations do not, in any way, invalidate what the person felt or experienced. They merely offer a scientific framework, a rational perspective, to try to understand these very human occurrences. On the other hand, for a significant number of people, these experiences are considered real and irrefutable proof that the dog's consciousness, soul or spirit, continues to exist in some form beyond physical death. Spiritual and cultural beliefs, deeply rooted in various parts of the world, firmly support the idea of an afterlife for animals and the possibility of communication or visitations by their spirits. Thus, the interpretation of these events largely depends on how each individual views the world and existence, whether through a predominantly scientific and materialistic lens, a spiritual and transcendental perspective, or a balanced combination of both. There is no single or universally accepted answer. However, one cannot deny the immense comfort and solace that believing in the return of a beloved dog can bring to someone who is grieving. Feeling their presence, believing they are still protecting or simply came to say a final goodbye, can be a crucial and extremely important part of the healing process and acceptance of loss for some people. Jen Goldbeck's study, which we mentioned earlier, even suggests that experiencing these apparitions of deceased pets can be psychologically healthy, representing manifestations of continued bonds and, almost invariably, experiences perceived as positive and comforting by individuals. The debate between scientific explanation, which seeks natural and observable causes, and personal experience, which sometimes seems to transcend the merely material and tangible, will very likely continue indefinitely. However, what no one disputes, regardless of their belief or perspective, is the overwhelming depth of love we feel for our dogs and the lasting, transformative impact they have on our lives, an impact so strong and significant that, for many, it seems to echo and resonate even beyond the threshold of death, challenging the frontiers of the known. Well, in this video, we've journeyed through a universe of moving stories, fascinating theories, and deep emotions related to so-called ghost dogs. We've heard about loyalty that seems to defy death itself, as in the cases of graveside vigils. We've explored the whispers and touches that seem to come from a mysterious beyond, and we've considered that comforting sense of protection many feel comes from a friend who has already departed. We've also seen how science and psychology interpret these complex experiences, often as natural and understandable manifestations of the intense grieving process that follows the loss of such a beloved companion, or as deeply personal interpretations of everyday events, colored by longing and love. The truth is, there are no easy answers or universally accepted truths when it comes to this sensitive and personal topic. For every story of a dog visiting a grave, like the devoted Bronco, there's a plausible behavioral explanation that doesn't invoke the supernatural. For every sensation of a ghostly presence, there's a psychological explanation that can frame it. And yet, for those who experience these moments, they are profoundly real, significant, and often transformative, offering a balm for the pain of loss. Perhaps the true proof of the connection's continuity isn't found in shaky photographs, ambiguous audio recordings, or fleeting shadows, but rather in the enduring and unshakable power of love and memory. It resides in how these wonderful companions shape our lives, teach us about loyalty and joy, and how their physical absence makes us seek connections, even if they seem to come from a place beyond our immediate understanding, from a dimension where love is perhaps the only universal language. What about you? Have you ever had an inexplicable experience with a pet who has passed on? Did you feel a subtle yet unmistakable presence? Hear a familiar sound that shouldn't have been there? Or have a dream so vivid and real it felt more like a visit than just a product of your mind? We would absolutely love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. Tell us the details, your emotions, how the experience impacted you. This is a safe space to share and connect through these very special experiences. If you believe that the bond with our four-legged friends can, in some mysterious and beautiful way, transcend life, or if you were simply moved by these stories and reflections, please show your support by giving this video a like. And don't forget to share it with other animal lovers who might find comfort or interest in this topic. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journeys into the mysteries that surround us and the wonders of the natural and perhaps supernatural world. Thank you so much for watching and for taking this journey with us. See you in the next video.